Hello again. Thank you very much for joining me here on Movie Ninja. And tonight I'm going to be talking about a new film that I recently saw, PSYCHO GORMAN. Now, this is definitely one of the out and out weirder movies that I've seen recently. Essentially, it's a reworking of a lot of tropes from the 80s. Hey. Before anybody judges that, yes, that has been theme, motif, trope, whatever you want to call it, in some popular movies as of recent. But the thing is that this genuinely comes as a love letter to a lot of both horror and childhood adventure films from the 80s. And it does so in a semi-wacky, mostly gory collaboration. This is a film about the eponymous PSYCHO GORMAN. PSYCHO GORMAN is an alien warlock that comes from planet blah 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 and fought alien blah blah blah, and he's extremely violent and extremely powerful. The crux of PSYCHO GORMAN's existence, however, is that if you possess a certain magical item, a MacGuffin of sorts, then you can control PSYCHO GORMAN. So essentially, anybody with this MacGuffin has the capability of controlling an insanely powerful, malevolent quasi-deity from outer space. A little girl gets it. So, and the child that finds the magic gem to control PSYCHO GORMAN is, in and of herself, in many ways frightening. If not for the events of the film, I believe she probably would have had a criminal future. The character would have had a criminal future regardless. She probably would have raised every single possible red flag for just a straight up psychopath. She fully embraces and accepts the fact, it does not daunt her in the slightest. Oh, by the way, this is this extraterrestrial demon is now under my control. There's nothing weird or frightening to her about anything about this entire situation, and yet she fully embraces her dominion over this horrific, chaotic, malicious force. At one point I thought to myself, what is the film, is it asking a specific question? Is it telling us something like, who's the real monster? It's not that blunt. It's not that on the nose necessarily, but it's kind of there. Something to bear in mind is that it's not in a very serious tone. This is clearly a comedy, because once again, this is kind of like a wink and a nod and a love note to a lot of 80s outer space horror flicks, slasher flicks, kid adventure films from the 1980s. So a lot of this is a spoof. A lot of it is a parody. But just so the main little girl, our main characters are PSYCHO GORMAN, is a little random girl, and her brother. I didn't bother memorizing either of their names, mostly because, for the most part, they're just treated as kind of extraneous. Yeah, and that's fine. Anyways, but, okay, so our three main characters just mess around and play games. The little girl has some behavioral issues and personality problems that are clearly the product of asymmetrical parenting. It's obvious that although in her two-parent household, her mom is trying to do the best that she possibly can, she has a horrible example from her father, who is just extremely lazy with regards to the safety of his children, as well as any type of investment in the household. So it's clear that although the mom is struggling and trying to keep her family afloat in many ways, including just the general upkeep of their household as well as, child rearing. And by the way, these kids, they're about, I have to eyeball it, about 11 and 12, maybe 13. The sister is on the younger side, the brother is the elder. But it's clear that from just one half lazy parenting that she has absolutely no anchor in life. She has very limited capacity for social skills, problem solving, conflict resolution, pretty much all of the primary foundational lessons that you would hope that a young child would have just in general, normal real life. She does not have. And I think it's probably she takes after the dad, because the dad is extremely unapologetic about any of his behavior. And just, once again, she's very apathetic to anything that her mother tells her to do or anything like that. And the mother has no support from the father. So you can kind of see, if you think she's a brat or a little monster, and she's controlling another monster, well, this is the situation that you get. So, bearing that in mind, of course, Psycho Goreman, he has enemies, because he has apparently killed untold scores of other aliens, and the film actually does a decent job of going into his backstory, rather hilariously. And so other aliens known as I believe they call themselves the Templars, the Space Templars or something. It's very over the top for what it is. So the Templars find out that Psycho Goreman is free, and well, they ain't having that. Especially because he apparently killed untold scores of them back, several thousand years ago. So, okay. So they find out about Psycho Goreman, who is currently under the demented control of a very unstable child. And, well, they go after him. And that's the plot. Something that I would also like for any potential audience members to bear in mind is that Psycho Goreman is not necessarily an exaggeration. Psycho Goreman, the character, and Psycho Goreman, the film, are extraordinarily violent. And that's, being a comedy, that's the joke. It's so over the top, you can't take it seriously. Kind of like if anyone ever saw Turbo Kid, which, by the way, I would actually add that. It's a little bit early, but I'm doing this anyways. I would add that as my recommendation for an 80s sci-fi love letter, as well as extraordinarily violent, over-the-top sci-fi action film, Turbo Kid. But anyways, back to Psycho Goreman. Now, with Psycho Goreman, something that you also have to bear in mind is that it's trying to embrace and also parody a number of certain aspects of my youth. Anyone who grew up in the 80s or the 90s should be familiar with a few TV shows such as Power Rangers, Big Bad Beetleborgs, VR Troopers. The effects are mostly practical, and they are extremely impressive. I can't stress that enough, and there's no sarcasm in that. They're extremely impressive. That being said, and I think it actually works for it, because it can't be too horrifying, because otherwise the horror aspect would overwhelm the comedy aspect, which it doesn't. It actually has a very decent balance. And so, with that, a lot of the monsters that appear in the film, they look rather goofy. There's a reason why I'm making that reference to Power Rangers, Beetleborgs, and VR Troopers, is that they look foam rubbery, they look very silly, almost cartoonish. But when you grapple that with the special effects, also well done, and the violence, this is something to both be in awe of, shock and awe, and just laugh out loud. It's hard to take the film too seriously. You want to compare it to E.T. meets The Gate, but even that doesn't do. E.T. meets The Gate meets the Don Dohler movie, a bunch of different aspects of some of the 80s leading into the 90s when it comes to schlock horror versus schlock horror action. But ultimately, it's not just competent in what it wants to do. It's extraordinarily effective. And I highly praise the craftsmanship, the workmanship that went into this particular project. And so, with that being said, my overall score for PSYCHO GORMAN is a very respectable 7 out of 10. So, if you know what you're getting into, I think a majority of audiences will enjoy it. And that is my review for PSYCHO GORMAN. As far as a accompanying title to also enjoy, if you also enjoyed this, I would also recommend Turbo Kid. Turbo Kid is on and off again available on Netflix. I have been recently watching it on Amazon Prime, if you have Amazon Prime. So, once again, thank you very much for joining me for this review. Did you guys see PSYCHO GORMAN? What'd you think about it? Please leave a comment. And if you enjoyed this review, please like and subscribe. Thank you very much for joining me this evening, and I hope you have a great rest of the day.